Yo, call me an award the way I just pulled out my sword. Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome back to the Games Cage. Today, and only today, we are here to talk about the Game Awards and, you know, the lack of announcements, right? Or, you know, lack of wins or whatever. But as always here at the Games Cage, I want to try to spin it into a good story. So make sure to sit down, subscribe to your boy. Let's have a nice classic yap session. So last night was the Game Awards 2025. Overall, the show was kind of okay for the most part. You know, there was some solid announcements throughout, but it was definitely littered with like the same classic CG, new IP, space shooters you would expect, but there was some really good surprises. In fact, I would argue that while I was waiting for Sonic all night, the announcement of a new Mega Man like legitimately filled that hole in my heart that I needed that night, because I felt like the night was lacking that sort of like big platformer, you know, silly moment. There was some fun games here and there throughout the show, but it was like seeing Mega Man back felt like that moment of like, you know, even Sonic Mania existing. I was like, oh my fucking god, finally, especially with like how Mega Man's been handled the last few years. Like, it's all been remasters and collections, and it's felt like we've been, you know, saving leading up to a big moment. So getting the announcement of Mega Man Double Overdrive, you know, Override, whichever it is, was so fucking cool. And they're bringing back like the Mega Man boss art contest where you can design your own Mega Man boss. Like, everything about this just looks really cool to me. So I did just want to ramble about Mega Man a bit before we get into obviously what we're here for. But like, I feel like it's just important, you know, if you're a fan of Sonic and platformers, it's cool seeing all the guys come back. You know, we've had Pac-Man come back as a platformer series with Pac-Man Repack World 1 and 2 recently. You know, obviously Mario is always at the forefront. Obviously we got, you know, Crash 4. And so it's cool to see Mega Man back after Mega Man 11 came out in like, what, 2018, I want to say, right? I literally remember I was in college when, or no, university when Mega Man 11 was announced. So to finally, you know, be where we are now, where like I'm you know, 5 years into this career and I'm not even in school anymore, finally getting a new Mega Man is crazy. All right, but let's talk about it. So first, I want to talk about the losses, right? So Sonic was nominated in 3 categories. We were nominated for Best Mobile Game. Why did I say we? You know what I mean. Best Mobile Game. It did lose to Uma Musume, which, okay, to be fair, if I'm gonna be honest with you guys, we're even lucky Sonic Rumble even got in there. You know what I mean? Like, Sonic Rumble, remember, like, had released globally maybe like a week or two before these Game Award nominations were even, you know, out in the wild. So for Sonic Rumble to even have been there is still a big deal, you know, and it lost to Uma Musume, which, to be fair, is one of the greatest games ever made. I still play it almost every day, getting my dailies, getting my horse girls. But yeah, it lost that category. I'm not surprised. Then it was nominated for Best Family Game, and it lost to Donkey Kong, which makes sense. I mean, look, Donkey Kong was nominated for Game of the Year, right? And so there's always this implication that when a game's like nominated for Game of the Year and it's in like random categories where like it's the only one of the Game of the Year nominees in there, it usually is going to win that category. Like, there was no world where DK Bonanza was suddenly going to lose Best Family Game in there, and I didn't expect that. But obviously, the biggest upset that caused a lot, you know, of conversation, debate, arguing, and all this stuff was Mario Kart World versus Sonic Racing Crossroads in Best Sports/Racing Game. So obviously, you know, it did lose to Mario Kart. I'm gonna say first and foremost that I like Mario Kart, right? Like, I did a whole review of it. I had videos of it on my channel. I spent a lot of streams playing the game. Like, let's not make no mistake, even though I adore Crossroads, I did a lot of streams playing knockout tours versus races. Like, I've played my share of Mario Kart World. In fact, when going into this year and Mario Kart World was shown, I remember being like, all right, I mean, I'm still excited for Crossroads, but hey man, Mario Kart World about to be my Game of the Year, but I adore Mario Kart as a franchise. But it did feel like this time around, Mario Kart World, like, I can't believe I'm saying this, not as a Sonic fan, I'm saying this as a Mario Kart like fanboy. You know, as someone who's grown up playing Mario Kart and always adoring Mario Kart, I felt like Mario Kart World wasn't the one this year. You know what I mean? It really has felt like Sonic Racing Crossroads has been the kart racer. I mean, not only did it launch with a fucking awesome set of tracks, it released with a great amount of content, and again, it is being supported consistently. This is a racing game that has been getting content every 2 weeks, basically 2 to 3 weeks since it's been out. You know, whether it's crossover characters, paid characters, free characters, the Legends ranked mode, you know, festivals. Like, it's a game that feels like it's getting constant updates, and it's incredibly fun. Now, granted, am I surprised Mario Kart won? No. At the end of the day, journalists are the one voting for the Game Awards. I think the fan votes are like 10% of the votes, but at the end of the day, journalists are the one voting for these. And typically, you know, journalists, they're not all there with Sonic yet, right? I mean, we're still like, you know, as up as we are with Sonic, thanks to the movies, thanks to Frontiers, Sonic Shadow Gens, and, you know, Crossroads now, right? We are still in that little bit of territory where, like, for like the basic journalists, it's still that thing of like, oh, I mean, Sonic, you know, Mario Kart obviously deserves this. Even if they didn't play a shit ton of Mario Kart, a lot of journalists are gonna remember, oh yeah, Mario Kart World came out with the Switch 2. I had a great time playing that on launch. Mark that down. You know, a lot more people probably played that game, and it's probably just that mental implication that Mario Kart World just deserved it. Now, again, granted, to be clear, Mario Kart World, banger game. I have a great time with it. I have a lot of issues with it, you know, whether it's the open world, lack of any substantial content since launch, you know, and just lack of features and stuff they should do for the game. But yeah, I did want to say in that sense that I really do like Mario Kart World, but it did feel kind of upsetting for Sonic Racing Crossroads to lose, just because it would have been nice to see that sort of tide change. But again, Mario Kart is still like in that legendary status for Nintendo. And again, it's not the end of the world. But I will say on this, right? I think people undervalue how big of a deal it is that Sonic is at the point of getting nominated for Game of the Year stuff in general. You know, I feel like people take it for granted. You know, when people say like, it's an honor to be nominated, like, it is an honor to be nominated. There are so many games coming out all year long at all times now, bro. And so to be narrowed down to that top 5 games, like, that's still a big deal. And so the fact that Sonic Racing Crossroads got nommed for Best Family Game and Best Racing Game and Best Mobile Game for Rumble, it's like, that's a big deal that we're even at the point that, like, people are signing those ballots enough to have Sonic on the list. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's how I feel about it through and through, is that like we are getting there, right? Because I remember, what was it? I think it was like 2 years ago, Sonic Superstars got nominated for a family game, right? Obviously in 2022, there was the big war for Sonic Frontiers, you know, for trying to win Player's Choice. Like, we're slowly getting there, you know, in that point where like Sonic is getting more like view in the spotlight to be nominated for stuff. And I do hope by the time we get to the next mainline release that that game is nominated for Best Family Game, Best Soundtrack, you know what I'm saying? Like, stuff like that. I feel like we are a ways off from the industry believing in a Sonic game ever being, you know, Game of the Year or any of that stuff. But at the very least, in the categories where it would deserve it. I would like Sonic to not just be dismissed for OST when it like literally is always one of the best soundtracks of the year. You know what I mean? I would like it to be represented in more categories in the future. But we are getting somewhere, and like I said, I'm still happy that so many people campaigned, and I'm so happy that a lot of people were upset it lost, because I really do like, dude, going from Team Sonic, like, guys, I think you're forgetting. Let's you know, rewind back together. Let's think about Team Sonic Racing versus Sonic Racing Crossroads. Like, the idea of any of us even considering it as our Game of the Year, let alone a Game of the Year nominee, would be fucking insane. You know, but like, to see how far we've come just by TSR to this is fucking awesome, and I'm really happy with where we are at. All right, but of course we gotta talk about the elephant in the room. No announcements for Sonic at the Game Awards this time around. So obviously I went in super confident and hopeful that it was going to happen. You know, I still did think there was a chance it wasn't going to, but alas, we did get not an announcement for Sonic this year at the Game Awards. And obviously now, you know, I am obviously a little upset, you know, just on a personal No, right? I would have loved to get that hype moment, that big stage, you know, reveal and all that stuff. But it did not happen this year. Now, I want to talk a little bit about, you know, first of all, what this might imply for the future. I still think there's hope. You know, people were asking me like after the show, like, well, does this mean there's no mainline game coming out next year, you think, right? Because usually they would have announced a mainline game by like a year's away from launch. I don't think it's impossible. I do think, you know, for example, Sonic X Shadow Generations was announced in February at a State of Play, and it came out that fall, right? And we even saw that with Superstars, right, where they announced it at Summer Games Fest, and it came out that October, right? So, but we do have the weird rule of Sonic Racing Crossroads was announced in December, but it did come out in September the following year. So it was about a 9-month window before launch, right? And so, you know, I don't know. I mean, two things could be the case here, right? I still think if a mainline game is coming out this year, like if we are getting the reveal of the next mainline Sonic game that's coming out, it's gonna be within the next 2 to 3 months. You know, I don't think it would be, if the next mainline game is coming out in 2026, right, next year, then it has to be announced within January to March. I really don't see a world, like, if it's not announced by March, that game is not coming out in 2026. I would just like bar off that idea by far, you know. But again, I still do think that State of Play in February, that usually, it's funny that now I go to State of Plays mentally for Sonic, but they've clearly had a deal with PlayStation for the last 2 games. You know, they did the Sonic X Shadow Gens reveal at the State of Play. They did the big re-reveal of Crossroads, or like full reveal of Crossroads at the State of Play. So they clearly have some kind of marketing deal with PlayStation. I don't think they are doing it with Nintendo ever again. It's funny because there was not a single Nintendo Direct that featured Sonic Racing Crossroads, and I don't think there was a Direct that featured Sonic X Shadow Generations, which I thought was just really funny. But I think that is because they have a deal with PlayStation. I don't think it's like some crazy conspiracy, because, you know, clearly Nintendo and Sega partner up a lot with Switch 2 editions and all that stuff. But yeah, I do think that does officially, like, this officially threw that wrench in my head. They're like, I'm no longer sure that next mainline game is going to be 2026. And look, we've talked about it. At the end of the day, like, it is way more important that they make the next mainline 3D Sonic game the greatest thing that, you know, they want to make, as opposed to like rush something out for the anniversary. Because yes, that is another factor about next year. Next year's the anniversary, man. 35th anniversary. And obviously, you know, people always look back at Sonic, like, they shouldn't pump out a game for the anniversary. I agree with that, but they are still absolutely, definitely going to be celebrating the anniversary with some kind of release. You know, I think, and I said this before, we are at a point with Sonic where we are most likely going to get an annual release of some kind. You know, I think maybe there might be a year where there's nothing, you know, potentially, but I do think we're at the point of Sonic where they can have a game released every year, or at least something substantial in the series every year, whether it's a movie, whether it's, you know, big DLC drops, right? Because if you think about like 2023, that was the year of, what was it? It was literally like the Sonic Frontiers DLC, Superstars, which is a smaller title, and I think it was like the Knuckles show, you know, which was like a little bit of a softer year, but there was still something, right? And even like, if you think about this year, right, I'm gonna do the next video we're gonna get on the channel, it's gonna be the big 2025 overview for Sonic. I'm gonna go over all over this stuff, but this year all we got was Crossroads. Like, Crossroads was the marketing of this year for Sonic. You know, there was nothing else, which is kind of like, it shows a lot about where Sega is at with the Sonic series, where they want to, you know, take care of it a little bit more, not rely on, again, having to just cheese the next mainline game. Like, they were pretty confident through and through this year that Sonic Racing Crossroads would be their game, and that they would just market it all year, which they did. And so, yeah, I do think we are most likely getting something next year. And, you know, looking back at the video I did before the Game Awards, I think that next mainline game, yeah, it's we're in that 2 to 3 month window if it's gonna come out. You know, I do know Sega Team. I think they had an interview a while back where they said they don't want to just tease games without gameplay anymore. Like, if you think about it, Superstars was not a CG trailer. You know, it started with CG right into gameplay. If you look at Sonic X Shadow Generations, it was, CG right into gameplay. But then you look at Crossroads, and that was just a CG reveal, and that was their latest reveal. So I don't really know where their head's at or if I can believe them with that. I still think there's a chance that next mainline reveal is just a CG trailer. But hey, if they really want to blow people away right from the get-go, I would go with a CG and then a teaser of the in-game look when they eventually get to it. But again, it not being there tonight really threw me off in a sense of like, all right, what am I expecting for next year? I feel like now my remake thoughts, I feel like, are much higher than they were before this show. If this next mainline game is not coming out this year, which again I don't still think is ruled out, and again, I don't want people to think that I'm trying to rush the next mainline game. I'm just trying to say that like there's still a chance, right? Because again, we've gotten announcements closer to release now than we usually have. Obviously if they need more time, take your time, but I'm just trying to say that it's not ruled out yet that we're not getting the game next year because it was here. In fact, one of the things I wanted to highlight that came out of last night, if I go over here, is Katie, our GOAT. She's the social media manager at Sonic. She said, "Congratulations to every video game that won and was revealed tonight at the Game Awards. This industry is so very special and so diverse. We've had several amazing years at Sonic, and we're gearing up for more. Please stay tuned until we are ready to share." So she gets it. I mean, she's obviously heard the noise. She's a smart person. They are a smart team, especially on the social media side of Sonic. We are gonna get stuff. And come on, let's all not forget the greed of the Bible that we have as Sonic fans. This is funny. This is a story about me and Aru. You guys know her. If you don't know her, go check her out. She does really cool stuff. But yeah, her and she gets upset at me because she's like, dude, I'm out here waiting for Final Fantasy. I'm a Square Enix person. And you as a Sonic fan, I always see getting something. Like, you guys are always getting some animated short. You guys are always getting movie stuff, games, DLC. And it's like, this is good. Like, hearing that is awesome. Obviously not awesome that she's not getting the stuff she wants, but it is awesome to see that from someone who's on the outside of the Sonic bubble, seeing that Sonic is always getting stuff is a good thing. I feel like that means we are at that positive point where it's being perceived that Sonic is getting cool stuff constantly, which, to be fair, we are. I mean, if you think about it, this year we got a Sonic animation. Literally in the last State of Play Japanese edition, we got, the reveal of Tangle Whisper and more characters. At what was it? Was it Gamescom or TGS? We got the Mega Man in Sonic Crossroads trailer. They've given us stuff constantly this year, whether it's music drops, whether it's animation, whether it's teases about the future. It's like we just get stuff left and right, up and down on the side. Whether it's movie news. Literally last year, a year ago around this time, we were legitimately just watching a Sonic movie 3 with one of the rawest, video game adaptations to ever do it. So yes, we absolutely are in a good place with the franchise. And so I'm not even upset that it wasn't here, because we are at that point with Sonic where there's always something cooking. And let's remember something really important here. Kishimoto, the director of Sonic Frontiers, has not put out a project since Sonic Frontiers. That man is cooking something. Obviously Izuka's not directed, but he's in the back end. He's watching, he's producing, he might be doing something. But Kishimoto has been in the lab. Let's not forget around the Sonic Frontiers release when he was going on Twitter answering a million people, whether it's about Sonic's character model, whether it was about the Final Horizon DLC characters. Like, you know, there's a lot of stuff he was just openly answering people and taking into feedback for that next game. And maybe they need a bit more time with whatever it is, but I do believe that that next game is like brewing, and when we see it, I don't know. I saw a lot of people on the timeline arguing and talking about how, like, you know, they're worried the model is not going to change and all that stuff. But like, I have a good feeling, man. I have a good feeling that we're still going to get that character model update, and people aren't going to be as upset anymore. But my thoughts don't change too much from the last video. I still think we are in the camp of 3 possible releases. I do think it's either going to be a remake of Heroes. I think it's either going to be that next mainline game, or it's going to be a, you know, remaster. It could also be just a collection, right? I feel like we are also lacking in the Sonic collection department, right? Like, think about it. We don't really have everybody would kill for a Sonic Advance widescreen HD collection, right? Like, that shit would do super well and be fun for the fans. Sonic Rush games are inaccessible to people. Even again, like, without the idea of remaking them, the fact that we went the entire Switch generation and now we are into Switch 2 and Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 are not playable on that console in some retro way is criminal. And let's not forget, let's not revisionist history here, let's not forget that Sega, I think it was like a few months ago, delisted a shit ton of their Dreamcast games from Steam. You know what I mean? And people are wondering, like, is Sega prepping some kind of service for their own, you know, old school library, because they have a big old school library that's not, again, really accessible in the way you'd think. So I think in a good way, right? Like, with Sonic, there's a lot of directions we can go in for next year. You know, we could get the next mainline game. I do think, regardless, right? Regardless of if it's not coming out next year or not, I do think no matter what, the hype cycle is going to start next year for the 3D Sonic game. Like, I think, like, there is going to be trailers and CG reveals and music drops and animations, all the stuff you would expect nowadays from a reveal. But the good thing about Sonic is, like, we could be in 5 different directions. We could get remastered and new content. We could get remake. We could get collection. Like, we are in that sort of position with the series where we can get any number of these things and it would still be a good time. And they would still manage to make content around it. And let's not forget, Crossroads is still getting updates throughout next year. You know, next year we are still getting Tangle, Whisper, Avatar content, the TMNT content, Mega Man, I said Mega Man, whatever. Mega Man, Pac-Man are getting in the game. We still have, I think it's going to be like 7 more of the free DLC characters. And we don't even yet have the confirmation of past or year 2 content, which I feel like is going to happen. At this point, with how successful Crossroads is, I would be shocked if I've officially reached that point where I would be shocked if we don't get the announcement of year 2 content for Sonic Racing Crossroads. You know, that's just my bold take and hope that I think we are going to get the announcement of year 2 content. Now, there is also the other elephant in the room, 35th anniversary, right? That's, you know, something that is leaked for a long time. There's been leaked calendars, leaked promo. Like, they have a logo and they very clearly have a plan. And so I'm wondering, when exactly are they going to kick that off? Is it by the end of this year? The account is going to tweet, thank you for the incredible year. Next year, boom, 35th anniversary logo. Are they going to, you know, maybe kick us off with a Sonic Central? Because again, another thing people forget, this year, we didn't get a Sonic Central. And this is like the first time we didn't get a Sonic Central in a minute. Now, I am a little bit happy about that because I think we could all agree Sonic Centrals the last few years have been a little bit disappointing. You know, it's kind of just like merch, mobile game. Oh, wait, here's one notable thing. The best Sonic Central that they ever did was the one back in 2021, where like they literally announced Sonic Origins, they announced Sonic Colors Ultimate, and then they teased Sonic Frontiers. At the time, you know, it was just Sonic project, whatever. But that's like, because that's as big as you get for a Sonic Central. You get a remaster, you know, you get a collection, you get a new game. Like, that's a good set of stuff. But besides that, you know, it's been a lot of all the other ones have been like, here's one cool thing, and then here's like merch, mobile. So I do wonder if they're trying to up the production, up the quality, because if you remember last year's Sonic Central, they were trying to be like a Nintendo Direct a lot more. Like, they did that big like bit with Izuka where he was on, you know, face cam with Shadow the Hedgehog, right? Like, they were trying to lean into the jokey side, you know, more heartfelt, trying to get you closer to the developers, that sort of thing. But yeah, I think I'm okay with the Sonic Central not happening this year if it means next year's is going to be a little bigger, right? And I think this year, you know, their whole campaign this year was Sonic racing around the world, which I do think for gamers, like, this campaign was kind of right? Like, I mean, they were doing a bunch of ads with like McLaren or, you know, a lot of racing companies and all that stuff, which, like, it's cool for branding, right? But like, as like a game fan, you're not really sitting there jazzed up, you know what I mean? It's not like they really even did much with it, especially coming off last year with Year of Shadow, right? Where it was like, oh yeah, we're bringing the Shadow statue to this event. Oh yeah, here's the animation for Shadow. Obviously, here's the movie. Here's this. Here's a million things centered around Shadow. And I felt like that campaign was a lot better. You know, the year before it was Fast Friends Forever, where, you know, they had the gang playable in Sonic Frontiers, right? You know, and they were having comics and all this stuff about the gang. I just feel like this year's campaign was kind of like, the problem is it was tied to the racing game, and so there's really not much you can do. You know what I mean? There's really not much you can do in there. And so I feel personally that whatever they do next year for the 35th anniversary inherently is going to be more exciting, right? Because I think the year after, for 2027, is all going to be about Amy and Metal. And again, we don't even know if like the next mainline game, my prediction is that next mainline game is going to happen next year, next fall. And then to hype up the movie around the March release that's happening in 2027, there's probably going to be like a big expansion DLC pack, maybe centered around Amy, to promote, you know, the movie, maybe an Amy and Metal story pack in there. But maybe they are in the main game. See, it's also a little weird because if you guys remember the Sonic Frontiers ending, the whole gimmick of it is that they all go their separate ways. Now, that idea could go to shit, and because the next game could be like, oh yeah, we all took our time to do our thing, and they're back, you know, or they could all be in separate locations. But it's, you know, it's a stretch to debate, you know, whether they're gonna be in that game or not yet. We have zero information. You know, this is one of the few times where, like, we're really going into that next game with zero info. There have been, you know, obviously your 4chan leaks and stuff, which all kind of just are pretty safe for the most part, you know, where it is like, oh yeah, it's floating islands. It's, you know, more momentum-based platform, all the stuff we were kind of expecting from the next mainline game, but nothing that, you know, is shocking yet that we don't know that they might be hiding in there. But look, regardless, next game will be shown eventually. And again, was I a little upset we didn't see it tonight? Of course, you know, I see, again, this is where I think about it, you know, whether that next mainline game's coming out next year. And I'm like, I don't know, man, like, that's the biggest stage you could have your game announced at, you know what I mean? Like, for the next mainline Sonic. And so them not being there when they paid for Crossroads to be there last year, I'm not sure, man. I'm no longer certain that game's coming out next year. But again, if it isn't, it's fine. We want that game to be fantastic. I think we are all agree we're at the point with Sonic where we need these games to be bare minimum great. You know what I mean? Like, that's the bar. Now, I think we've gotten at a good quality point review-wise. You don't want to take that away. Sonic Shadow Gens reviewed super well. You know, Sonic Racing Crossroads reviewed super well. Sonic Frontiers, while not the greatest, you know, definitely better than where we were at years ago. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I think while it's okay to be a little disappointed we didn't see something here, they're cooking. You know, we have confirmation that they're cooking. We have had Katie saying it. We've had Izuka and Kishimoto on countless interviews of, you know, Sega implying that the future of Sonic is bright and that they want to take care of it a lot more. So I would not worry Everything's gonna be all right. We're gonna get what we want eventually. So guys, thank y'all for watching today's video. You guys are the best. And of course, if you need anything, I love you, and I will see you all next time. Peace out.